Mm.
Here. Yeah. So, good evening. We are, conspiring here on how to get this meeting going. First and foremost, thank you so much for gathering, some of you for a second time on this, which shows your passion for the topic at the very least, and for Arlington in general. So thank you so much for this. It's December 17th. I'm Takis Karantonis. I'm the County Board Chair this year, here joined with Vice Chair De Ferranti, Member Susan Cunningham, Maureen Coffey, and Julius J.D. Spain Sr. And this is the last part of the 2025 series of regular meetings that I will be gaveling in. So we are in session. As you really remember, we transferred, or we continued the meeting in the initial meeting of this for tonight, and we continued the deliberation, and we also continued taking public comment. So the podium is here. And I know that some or many of you have already signed up to testify tonight. Most of you know the drill. For in-person speakers, the podium height can be adjusted. If you're submitting any documents with your testimony, they should be directed to our clerk, Mr. Kushner. Remote speakers, please, during testimony, please keep your microphones muted and your cameras off until you are called on to speak. So in the item that we are continuing deliberation today on is item number 46 of the agenda of this month, December. It's on an advisory panel on the form of government. A board presentation was shown last time, so we are continuing with public testimony, and I will ask the clerk to call, if there is no objection, the first speakers on this.
Of course, a moment, please. And just to reiterate, we do have a number of speakers tonight, so we'll call them two at a time. If your name has been called, we just ask that you state yourself and be ready to go immediately when your name is called. We will begin with our first in-person speaker, Ms. Jean-Marie Pena, and I apologize, she's going to be virtual tonight. Jean-Marie?
Hi, good evening. My name is Jean-Marie Pena. I'm a county resident, and I'm here to express my support for the proposed charter with amendments focused on racial equity. So exploring changes that could improve the county's form of government is a common sense step to a very clear and significant problem. So the county's form of government was established nearly 100 years ago, and we know that it was deliberately set up the way that it was to shut out the voice and power of Black community members. So this form of government is long overdue for an update, especially for changes that dismantle its roots in racism. And so starting a conversation on what form of government could better serve and represent our community is essential. However, the board should amend the charter to ensure that the panel is applying a racial equity lens to this task. So I urge the board to include the NAACP's proposed amendments to ensure representatives from historically marginalized communities are included in the advisory panel, and to charge the panel with developing an equitable community engagement plan. But really, as the NAACP also emphasized, the charter must be really explicit about the role of equity in guiding all of the advisory panel's work. So for example, in the historical review, it will be really important to review the history of the form of government from the lens of race and racism. And also for the comparative governance analysis, it'll be really important to understand how different forms of government fare with improving racial and ethnic representation. And so focus on equity, especially racial equity, must be infused throughout all of the panel's work. So I'll say to end that this conversation has been kicked down the road many times before. So yes, take the time to improve this charter, but then move quickly to establish the advisory panel so that we can start the process of dismantling the racial injustice in the current form of government and to building a multiracial democracy that truly serves and represents everyone in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Pena. The next speaker, please.
Yes, our next speaker this evening is Mr. Ricky Curon, followed by Ms. Conyers.
Mr. Curon, are you in the room? Maybe we can go to the next speaker and we can come back to Mr. Curon. We can circle back.
If I might suggest circling back to the speakers at the end.
So nice to see you. Good evening.
How are you? Good evening, everyone. My name is Nadia.
Can you, your microphone, I believe, is not on. There is a little button on the base of the microphone that you can, yes, let's check it. Awesome.
My name is Nadia Green Conyers. I am a fifth-generation Arlingtonian, and I stand here tonight carrying more than my own voice. I carry the voices of ancestors who built this county with their hands, backs, and their lives, many of whom were denied pay, power, and the right to be heard. History is not behind us. History is standing in this room. Arlington calls itself progressive, it calls itself equitable. But the truth is, a system does not become just because time passes. Justice requires truth, and truth requires courage. For generations, decisions made in rooms just like this one shaped who was welcomed, who was displaced, who was protected, and who was sacrificed. Black communities were uprooted, historic neighborhoods were erased, voices were silenced, and too often progress was built on forgetting. I ask you tonight, what does leadership look like when memory demands accountability? What does courage look like when reflection is uncomfortable? And what does legacy look like when the future is watching? As a program coordinator for Arlington DHS for over 22 years, I was evaluated year after year, not as punishment, but as practice, because anything worth sustaining must be examined. We never said it works for most clients, so let's just leave it alone. Why should governance, power that shapes lives, be exempt from that same discipline? This moment is not about accusation, it is about alignment. Alignment between our values and our actions, between what we say Arlington is and how it actually serves all its people. Make no mistake, choosing not to reflect is still a decision. Silence is still a legacy. Delay still teaches our children something. So I ask you plainly, when future generations ask you what you did in this moment, will you say you protected comfort or that you chose conscience? Arlington has the opportunity tonight to show that leadership is not afraid of the mirror, that it understands that reckoning is not weakness, it is wisdom. The ancestors are watching, the children are watching, and history is recording.
Thank you, Ms. Conyers. Is
Mr.
Mr.
Chair,
Curran
I
available?
believe he has just joined us. We would like to return to Mr. Ricky Curran, and then we'll move on to
Okay.
Lawrence Larry Fishthaler.
Mr. Curran?
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Curran.
Good evening. Give me a second. Let me just pull up my notes. This is my first time doing this.
That's okay.
Okay. First off, I want to thank the Arlington County Board meeting for allowing me 2 minutes of their time for this very speech. My name is Ricky J. Curran. I'm an actor, poet, aspiring comedian, and an activist. It's almost only been a year under the second term of Trump, and it's already been hectic, filled with fear, division, anger, frustration, hate, and confusion. But to be honest, I may disagree with some people across the aisle on some things, but I'm going to look at them in the eye and say, how do you feel now under this second term? How do you feel? Do you feel safe? Do you feel like you belong in society? Do you feel like you are now in a position where you might get what you want from him? I'll answer you. No, better yet, think about it when you get home tonight. As for the tax rate, under Trump, the tax rates are horrible. The billionaires are skipping taxes thanks to him, while American people, like myself, are paying taxes. Taxes should not be only handled not only by the working class and the billionaires. Now let's talk about education. But I'll keep it short and sweet since I don't have time. 43 seconds. When I was growing up, schools brought kids together no matter what race, creed, gender, orientation, because everyone was treated equally. Now look at it nowadays, this administration. I better hurry up because I got 30 seconds. Now this education system needs more love than dictatorship, more inclusion than exclusion, more equality than inequality. Now I'm proud of this board meeting members who stand on business, but who clearly disagrees with me. Hear me out. Think about the next generation, and so on, and think of how they will learn of history. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curran. The next speaker, please.
Yes, our next speaker is Lawrence Larry Fishthaler, followed by Alice Hogan.
Good evening, Mr. Fishthaler.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for providing this opportunity to speak with you about the proposed county board panel on governance. I'm Larry Fishthaler, a member of the schools community, those of us who are working to provide a great education for each student and every student. Governance of the county and governance of our schools share strong, important linkages, dimensions related to demographics, revenue sharing and budgeting, safety and shared services, and opportunities for community engagement. If you do create an advisory panel, I urge you to expand the membership to include members from the education community. That panel should be informed by and take cognizance of the implications for our schools and their governance. So they should enhance the benefits for all the families of our students. Thank you for consideration of this point.
Thank you, Mr. Fischtaler. The next speaker, please.
Yes, our next speaker is Alice Hogan, followed by Tim Huson.
Good evening, Ms. Hogan.
Good evening. I'm Alice Hogan, lifelong Arlingtonian, and I've been working for years to include voices from the underrepresented groups in our community. I love this community. I want it to be the best it can be, and it's pretty darn good. But there's always room for improvement, and we should be sure our systems serve everyone equally. And even good systems can improve, especially to include all sectors of our community. So I'm not opposed to a deep assessment of our government systems and believe such an assessment could result in improvements to bring more Arlingtonians into our decision-making processes. That said, I do want, to commend the board for listening to the community and being willing to delay this process. A true examination of our form of government should be a very comprehensive process, deeper and wider than perhaps anything we've done before. We know how difficult it was in efforts such as the COVID information distribution, participation with the census, Vision 2050, and now the comprehensive plan update. It takes extreme efforts over months and months to provide adequate information to the community and to provide opportunities to receive feedback back from a wide variety of Arlingtonians. At this moment, we are in a crisis, and across our nation and in our community, with regard to the budget, immigration, extensive unemployment, and whatever else is thrown at us from across the river in the coming weeks and months. I believe our entire effort should be on stabilizing our residents and supporting each other the best we can in this moment. We'll have a better understanding of the budget and political winds later into 2026, and perhaps at that time we could assess that the county staff and the community has the bandwidth to truly dive into this deep and extensive examination. I look forward to that endeavor, and I hope that we do it in an appropriate time. And thank you for the deferral.
Thank you, Ms. Hogan.
Have a good night.
Good night. The next speaker, please.
Yes, of course, is Tim Huson, followed by Mr. Jeremiah Howard.
Mr. Hewson. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Can you hear me? My name is Tim Hewson. I'm a longtime Arlington resident. I urge you to think hard about the charter document for this advisory group. What we specifically include and don't include is important. For example, the Civic Federation's Tiger Panel was a really strong and diverse group which included former county board and school board members and which spent 18 months working through this issue. I found their proposals really interesting. I think we should explicitly state in the charter that the advisory group should consider the Tiger Panel's recommendations. Second, a fundamental consideration is how we foster equity and diversity in citizen participation. I've actually been focused for the last 2 years on improving Latino voter participation across 4 counties. District-based representation was eliminated 100 years ago, probably intentionally to reduce diversity on the board. Now, district-based and hybrid representation are explicitly mentioned in the charter document, but nowhere is ranked choice voting mentioned, which was a key element of the Tiger proposal to foster diversity. Ranked choice voting should be mentioned explicitly in the charter. There are lots of pros and cons for districts, but I'll just touch on what I see as the main issue. Districts might be able to increase diversity on the board. The devil would be in the details. How you draw districts might make a huge difference. How do we ensure that districts aren't gerrymandered? Who's going to draw the lines and how? These are fundamental, critical considerations. Lastly, the charter doesn't touch on the school board. We're going to ask the state for permission to reorganize the county board, but not the school board. I think it's critical to include the school board in the charter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hewson.
Our
The next speaker, please.
Yes, is Mr. Jeremiah Howard, followed by Michael Tracy Cantwell.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, our county is mired in a crisis of political legitimacy. Critical decisions pertaining to citizens' health, wealth, and happiness are being made by representatives elected by a 15% turnout of voters. Our at-large board represents everyone and thereby no one. Our board has been captured by well-resourced national and regional NGOs. It has insulated itself from the people with layers of studies, staff open houses, and online polls. The result is fossil fuel charged electric buses for very few riders, affordable housing policy we can't afford, and densification no one wants. The people should not have to dialogue with the board through dueling lawsuits. We should be able to talk to representatives who live in and love our neighborhoods. Please put the people above party and endorse district representation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. The next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Mr. Michael Cantwell, followed by Ms. Mary Glass.
Good evening, Arlington.
Mr. Cantwell, if you can stop for a moment. I apologies for interrupting you. I just want to make sure. These are speakers that have spoken in the previous public comment. This is a continuation of that. Does it mean that they speak twice, or is it fine to allow that?
The action at the previous board meeting was to allow for an additional public hearing.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that this is fine.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Cantwell, again, apologies for interrupting you. You can proceed.
Good evening, Arlington County Board members. Tonight, I have a simple and short message. I encourage you to support Delegate Patrick Hope's Arlington Form of Government bill and defer the convening of the Arlington Form of Government Advisory Panel until after Delegate Hope's bill becomes law. Just to review, Delegate Hope's bill is permissive, not prescriptive. It just gives Arlington elected officials and voters the same rights as other counties in Virginia. Convening the advisory panel now would be premature. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cantwell. The next speaker, please.
Yes, our next speaker is Ms. Mary Glass, followed by Nicole Toulouse.
Good evening, Ms. Glass.
Good evening. Thank you. First, I want to express my sincere and deep appreciation for all the committed work that Arlington County's public servants are doing. Arlington voters have expressed governance concerns for more than a decade, and they're being shortchanged by this recommendation to defer creating a charter until June 2026. Requiring layer upon layer of time and work will not allow change. Instead, it guarantees no board action on the substance until 2027. Right now, we have an opportunity to act more effective governance to meet the changes that are already confronting us. We need to create the most effective size and structure of governance to meet these challenges and also to be flexible for the future. Our response must not be fearful or backward-looking. It must embrace this opportunity for bold new leadership. My November 30th letter to the board provided a detailed summary of my concerns and specific recommendations on the charter. A few items are immediate creation of a streamlined panel charter. Significant research that's already been completed by the Civic Federation should be used. Hundreds of public comments that have already been collected and are available be used to expedite the outreach. That the very early in the process, the panel's public outreach should include panel members physically going out to all corners of the county for two-way discussions with voters, not presentations. The panel should provide the board with brief monthly summaries of findings and conclusions to move more quickly toward final recommendations that the board can act upon. I also support Hope's bill. The board can do this work in parallel with the enactment of legislation to facilitate changes in governance now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Glass. The next speaker, please.
Sorry. Work with me. Yes, our next speaker is Nicole Toulouse, followed by Mr. Daniel Weir.
Good evening, Ms. Toulouse. Ms. Toulouse, maybe we can go to the next speaker and then come back to Ms. Toulouse.
Yes, of course, our next speaker
Good evening,
Daniel,
Mr. Weir.
is Mr. Daniel Weir, followed by
You
Brian
will
Coleman.
have to use the facility of... Yeah, exactly.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the County Board. For the record, Daniel Weir speaking in my individual capacity. It seems to me that a bedrock part of governance is stewardship. tapping into public time, resources, and attention with great respect and care, acting like $10 spent on something today is $10 that won't be available to us either today or tomorrow or ever. Good stewardship means reading economic forecasts and thinking, wow, 1 in 10 Arlingtonians were referred to emergency food assistance this year, but we are facing a disaster, and we're continuing to face a disastrous outlook for revenue for health and human services. It also means that looking at important areas for improvement and accurately sizing up what resources will be required to do it right, what scoping, what planning, how to get things right, and what not to do to avoid getting things wrong. We can't have foggy minds or foggy ideas when talking about our form of government. We need clear-headed, robust outreach to all of Arlington's communities. This kind of thing needs to be on the scale of the next big idea project. It can't delegate the statement of the problem to private organizations. It's not something we can Leroy Jenkins our way into. That's how we break something really precious. It's how we have one board member who will take our calls instead of 5. It's how we lose our authorities to do things like committed affordable housing or the authority to transfer development rights that will make Jenny Dean Parks Phase 2 work. We don't have those resources now. We will someday. We don't have them now. And if we do this badly, we risk breaking what we can do while failing to help those who need our help the most today. Please defer this action as long as possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. Mr. Kushner, maybe Ms. Toulouse can join.
Yeah, we can try again. Nicole Toulouse.
It's okay. I hear that you may not be available at this moment. Let's call the next speaker, Mr. Coleman.
Yes, of course. On to Mr. Brian Coleman. Coleman, followed by Susan Land.
Good evening, Mr. Coleman.
Thanks to the last speaker for having me go through a very humbling ego check on the height. Thank you, everyone. My name is Brian Coleman. Pleasure to speak with you all tonight. I am very grateful for Arlington being my adopted home after moving here nearly 5 years ago to the date. I've been able to blossom here as this community has welcomed me into a number of advocacy roles and community opportunities. That being said, I've always sought to try to make Arlington a better place, not just for people like myself, but for people coming into the community that need a home and see Arlington as their new home. That being said, there are always opportunities for the county to improve. It's what makes us a great community. And that being said, I think that process needs to be thoughtful and considerate of all the factors that would engage us as we try to make new outreach opportunities available to people who aren't traditionally in the rooms that many of us occupy. That process, I think, should include a number of robust outreach opportunities that county board members should do to communities that are not traditionally represented in the spaces where decisions are made. But that being said, I think there is a quantitative difference between having a cautious stance in moving forward versus choosing to do nothing and operating under the assumption that things will suddenly become better some other day. While there are very difficult circumstances we are dealing with employment and our difficult budget situation, we know that the current system that we live under was done so in order to expressly discriminate against people who look like me. And Arlington cannot be the best that it can be without taking those things seriously, because a pear tree can't suddenly grow apples. We have to be very deliberate about what we choose to do in this moment, because we may not get another opportunity. As has been said earlier, this is a process that is decades in the making, and I believe that this county board is capable of making the proper choice in this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Ms. Land, I assume that Ms. Toulouse is still not accessible.
No. We'll move next to Ms. Susan Land, followed by Jason Schwartz.
Ms. Land?
You may need to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Good evening, Ms. Land.
Thank you. My name's Susan Land. I would like to support this proposal for studying the possible changes to the structure of the county government. I would like the study to seriously consider switching to a representative system where each county board member represents a certain geographical area of the county, similar to what is done in Washington, D.C. with their ward system. There are many advantages to this. Each county board member would have 50,000 constituents rather than 250,000 constituents. When issues do arise, a county resident would have just one person on the board they need to reach out to, and that one person would be accountable for responding to that issue. Currently, if residents in the county want to raise an issue with the board, they need to write to all 5 of you. And then one of 2 things happens. The risk that none of you will prioritize the issue is quite high, since many of you may think another one of you is going to address the issue. Or you'll need to spend time together as a group gathering and prioritizing the issues among all 5 board members to determine who will take the lead on which issue. A representative board would make this process much more efficient. In terms of how to divide the county into districts, we also have a huge head start on that too. The county is already divided into 62 civic associations with very clearly delineated lines between them. It seems like it would be not too difficult a task to group these 62 civic associations into 5 groups of approximately 50,000 residents each. I hope that the county and this study group seriously considers the benefits of switching from a 100% at-large board to a geographically representative board. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Land. The next speaker, please.
Is Jason Schwartz, followed by our 3-minute speakers, beginning with Ms. Susan Cope.
Hi, my name is Jason Schwartz, and I support the deferral of this advisory panel. This must be done right, and the deferral provides the necessary time to get this charter right. To quote County Board Member Cunningham, we need to have a clear problem statement. I've yet to hear one of many hours of testimony and online. I've yet to hear a clear problem statement. And then to quote County Board Member Coffey, we need to first look at our existing state, take a look at the pros and cons of our current system, and then go to further recommendations of what we're going to do. This is not something to take lightly. Jumping into predetermined solutions like going to a district system or other solutions that have been presented is very unwise and premature. Again, as Chair Karantonis, as you said, our governance is very good and has done many great things that is by far more progressive and modern than other systems have done in our region and across local government around the country. For this, I have 2 recommendations. One, for this panel, the scope really needs to be tightened up. The panel should examine the things our current governance is and what it's doing and how it works, and then work towards generating the next problem statement of things that we need to do. We cannot be jumping into, again, predetermined solutions that have been coming in. There's a lot of things, a lot of different people that we need to engage. And talking about engagement, this panel should be a representative slice of our community. Currently, 64% of Arlingtonian households are renters, and 38% of Arlington's population lives in metro corridors. These are 2 demographic slices that have historically been underrepresented at our highest levels, underrepresented in commission meetings, been underrepresented across government. It's always a challenge because these are the people that are, out working.
Why don't they show up?
Raising their family. They're out doing so many things.
Thank you. If our online speakers could mute their microphones until it is your turn to speak, we would appreciate it.
Thank you. We just got to get this right and make sure that we're really bringing this together. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Ms. Toulouse is still not with us. She was in the list. Okay. So the next speakers are on the 3-minute segment. Mr. Kushner, let's call the
starting
first
with
one.
Ms. Susan Cope, followed by
Ms.
Mr.
Koch.
Alan Kush.
Good evening, Ms. Koch.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I am here in my personal capacity, not representing the organization that many of you know me from. My name is Susan Koch, and I would like to make 3 main points. First, I've lived in Arlington for 40-plus years. I've voted in every election since 1977, yet until a few years ago, I had no idea what the function of the county board or the county manager was, and certainly had never heard of the Dillon Rule. You can say shame on me, and I accept that. But if someone like me, who is well-informed and well-educated, knew nothing about my local government, how many other residents are the same? The gap in awareness confirms why a discussion and review of Arlington's form of government is important. Having a diverse committee with multiple opportunities for input will help raise awareness, not only of what is now, but what might be in the future. My second point, Some have suggested that now is not the right time. I suggest there is never a good time to do something hard. There's never a good time to have a baby, there's never a good time to get a divorce, and there's never a good time to look at your form of government. This is an opportunity to show real leadership and hold up a mirror to the status quo. If a proposed committee does its job properly, it won't start with foredrawn conclusions. It should be open-minded and explore options. It shouldn't create an extra burden on county board members either. It'll be asked to provide well-researched ideas and recommendations, not a solution. Therefore, the idea that establishing a committee would divert the board from focusing on county critical issues isn't valid in my mind. Third point, Arlington residents deserve a transparent evaluation of how effectively our government is organized. It's been more than 90 years, for goodness sakes, and what Arlingtons deserve is a government that serves all its people, not relying on rules in place since we were a segregated community. Finally, now is the time to ensure we are well positioned for the present, but also for the future. We've seen nothing but impotence and incompetence from the federal government. I urge you to be brave leaders and allow Arlington to shine. I endorse this project begin without delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Koch. The next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Alan Gadjadar, followed by Kristen Brown.
Good evening, Mr. Gadjadar. Did I get it right?
Close.
Close.
Good evening, Chair Karantonis, members of the County Board. 249 years ago, the founders of this country, some of whom had appropriated the very land on which we now live, founded this nation and created a governing structure to ensure their own life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, at least for white male landowners. A decade later, the Constitution was adopted, and then the Bill of Rights. This governing structure, which created the society in which we live today, a very well-run, powerful, and prosperous society, has been revised time and time again to ensure that the original promises could become true for all people. The 14th Amendment extended those rights and freedoms to black men, and the 19th Amendment extended it to women. In the last century, there were many landmark and very narrow Supreme Court decisions and legislation that outlawed legally sanctioned discrimination in voting, housing, education, and many other areas of life that had still existed, some sanctioned by Jim Crow laws from the 1930s. Our current form of government in Arlington has a similar record. It was developed to provide proper governance and management of a rapidly growing suburb of Washington, and at the same time, by design, diluted the growing voting strength of black residents, and a number of other laws from that time further limited minority rights. In my lifetime, laws restricting marriage by race and school attendance right here in Arlington, Virginia, have also been struck down. These laws still existed in a county that was, by all accounts, quote, well-run, unquote. Yet centuries of inequitable access to housing, education, medical care, and the law systematically disenfranchised a large proportion of its citizens. The common theme here is that all organizations, even those that appear to be well-run to those that benefit, need periodic reassessment and change, governance in particular. This is a critical factor in good government, continued evaluation and evolution. Conditions change, the social, political, and economic world changes, and now, in a time of great turmoil, we have the greatest opportunity and need to seize the moment to evaluate and revise our governing structures in society to ensure that a well-run organization is tuned to better perform in a society that has vastly changed from the Arlington that existed 100 years ago. We need a county board that has a greater capacity to look out for its constituents, particularly the most vulnerable. We need a government that is more responsive to and can gain the support of all its residents, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or housing status. To address these needs, I strongly urge the county board to move forward without delay to establish the advisory panel to examine Arlington County's form of government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gottschalk. Did I get it right this time? A little bit better.
That was almost right. Yes, thank you,
I
sir.
commit to improvement. The next speaker, please.
Yes, our next speaker is Kristen Brown, followed by Ms. Anika Tene.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I support immediately initiating the form of government study that's before you here. And I want to make a few points in response to some issues that I've heard, some points raised either by folks on the board or others, including the idea that we have too many other things on our plate at the moment, that it's not the right time, that we should delay action here, or that somehow, and this is really troubling to me, this review, this study is an indictment of how Arlington has done things. I think nothing can be further from the truth. Moving forward with this study is just an acknowledgement that as times evolve, which they have in the last century, governments can and must seek to evolve themselves to meet the needs of their residents. It seems to me it is never too soon to examine those kinds of issues. There's no problem statement that needs to be addressed here, and frankly, I think that's a red herring. It is simply to meet an already clear desire most of you, I think all of you, have expressed and campaigned on, which is for a fair and equitable and inclusive approach to governance here in Arlington. The advisory panel charter does not need to have every I dotted or T crossed. The proposed advisory panel is non-binding and strictly advisory. Its purpose is not to predetermine any outcomes. It is about input, reflection, and a careful examination of the strengths and limitations of our current form of government. And I'm sure many strengths will be noted because we do have a great group of leaders and a great form of government, but it can always be better. At the end, you all review the results and determine the next steps. So what you have before you is a decision of whether to form a commission to study our form of government and make recommendations that you get then to decide upon. That's a good process, and that one that I feel really should proceed apace. How we govern determines how effectively we address so many important issues: housing, schools, transportation, and climate, ones we are all so passionate about. To dismiss governance reform as a distraction is to dismiss the foundation of our democracy. This study is about building the tools that allow us to be the best Arlington we can be. So I'd urge moving forward without any delay, and appreciate all of you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. The next speaker, please.
It is Anika Tanay, followed by Mr. Robert Welsh Jr.
Good evening, Mr. Tanay.
Good evening, Chair and members of the County Board. My name is Anika Tanay. I am an Arlington resident, and I've lived here since August 2014. Over that time, I've been deeply engaged in this community as an activist, as an advocate, a former commission chair, a community organizer, and a parent of APS-educated students who are now registered voters. I voted in every election since moving here. I've served as a poll greeter, an election officer. I believe in democracy not just as an idea, but something we practice together over time. Professionally, I'm a director of a regional organization where I lead complex multi-stakeholder work across jurisdictions. Also, I work as a consultant. This is not a job interview, but I work as a consultant and design and facilitate community-led representative processes that help institutions make thoughtful, credible, transparent decisions. Here in Arlington, I'm a founder of Arlington for Justice. I served on the Lee Highway Renaming Committee, and I'm currently a planning committee member with WOFA, We Have Action, working alongside neighbors who care deeply about civic engagement, accountability, and collective responsibility. As a former chair of the Arlington Commission for the Arts, I led a community-based committee during a period of significant budget cuts. That committee generated community-driven recommendations, many of which helped to stabilize Arlington's arts ecosystem today. That work succeeded for one reason. The process was transparent, inclusive, and not rushed toward a predetermined answer. Today, I also serve as the executive director of the Arlington Children's Chorus. From that lens, I think deeply about how the form of government affects community organizations like ours that rely on county grants, and about what this work signals to future generations. Our chorus includes over 80 young singers from across Arlington County. They are watching how decisions are made. They are learning from what leadership looks like, the structures we choose or choose to examine, shape the Arlington they will inherit. I'm sharing all of this to say I support the creation of a representative, community-based body to examine Arlington's form of government. That examination is reasonable. It is responsible. What I want to underscore tonight is this: do not decide the outcome before the process has done its work. This work is complex. It is once in a generation, and if it's done poorly, it risks damaging trust for a very long time. Right now, it feels like we're putting the cart before the horse. Let the process breathe. Let the community inform it. Let evidence, not urgency, guide what comes next. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ney. The next speaker, please.
Yes, our next speaker is Mr. Robert Welsh Jr., followed by Bernie Byrne.
Is Mr. Welsh here? I don't see him. Maybe Dr. Byrne?
We can move next to Mr. Bernie Byrne. I do not see him in person.
I don't see Mr. Byrne. Ms. Davis?
Going once, going twice. We will move next to Ms.
We will
Davis.
We will get back. Mr. Dave Schutz. I see Mr. Dave Schutz.
Hello? I'm here. Bernie
Mr.
Byrne.
Schutz, if I may, Dr. Byrne has found the connection with us. Then go ahead, Mr. Byrne. Dr. Byrne.
Yes.
Good evening.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. I had a little problem there. Please either defer consideration of the establishment of an advisory panel to examine Arlington County form of government, or stop that consideration at this meeting. Any such consideration will open a can of worms that can have many unforeseen consequences. Remember Pandora's box. Any change to the current form of government will not be acceptable to many. For example, some of the Arlingtonians support so-called equity, while others consider equity to be a pernicious form of illegal discrimination against white males. Nevertheless, based on previous county board decisions, the advancement of equity would almost certainly be a goal of this process when it all comes out. As another example, some Arlingtonians contend that the county board should have representatives from specific areas within the county. Others, however, point out that the DC Council has some local representation, but that one such representative has recently been reelected after being convicted of a crime and unanimously censured by the remainder of the council. Do you want that to happen here? The Arlington County Civic Federation was one of the instigators of this process. However, the Federation did not open its consideration of a committee proposal to discussion and amendments by the entire membership. The membership could only vote on whether or not to make the committee's proposal a formal position of the Federation. Nobody could amend that. Some people have contended that the present form of government resulted from an effort to disenfranchise a specific racial group at the time that it occurred. Others contend that the timing of the form of the change in the government was only a coincidence. There's just coincidence. A lot of things were happening at that time. Again, these things that people are saying simply are not true or not fully considered. The county's current form of government is really not broken. Do not try to fix it. You may instead break it into small pieces that you cannot repair. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Byrne. We will continue with the speakers on the list, and we will get back to speakers who weren't here or we couldn't reach at this point at the end of the list. I believe that the next speaker is Mr. Schutz.
Assuming Ms. Davis was not available to speak, I do not see her. Mr. Dave Schutz is next.
Am I the right person? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Schutz.
Good evening. I've got the mic on? Yes. Thank you for the opportunity. I support immediately initiating this form of government study. and I want to respond directly to the concerns which have been raised in the comments you've gotten in the month that's just passed. I recognize that I'm swimming upstream here, that the proposal is to defer. And if you do vote to defer, I hope the coming 6 months will be used to write background material to best orient the task force members for the work ahead of them then. Some argue that the charter was created too quickly or lacks focus. In reality, Arlington has been discussing governance reform for decades. The draft charter is not a finished product. It is a framework meant to evolve with community input. The study itself is the mechanism through which clarity will emerge. Endless delay will merely create stagnation. Concerns about fiscal constraints and staff capacity should not be excuses for inaction. Every major initiative we've done in Arlington, from schools to transit, has faced resource hurdles. Governance is no different. A well-structured government is the foundation upon which all of our other priorities rest. The proposed schedule, task force meetings over a year with board engagement intensifying at the end, avoids adding to the current press of work. Some worry that equity, representation, and school board implications might be overlooked. In fact, the study is precisely the tool that should ensure that these issues are front and center. Working to ensure broad public understanding will guarantee that equity and representation are guiding principles, not afterthoughts. Finally, the claim that this process is unnecessary, that it detracts from critical community issues, misunderstands the very nature of governance. How we govern determines how effectively we address housing, schools, transportation, and climate. To dismiss governance reform as a distraction is to dismiss the foundation of our democracy. This study is about building the tools to govern better, more fairly, and more effectively. This is our best chance to look again at our form of government in the almost 100 years since it was developed. We should grasp it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schutz. The next speaker, please.
Yes, our next speaker is McGlynn Cauchon, followed by Michael Beer.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you all. My name is McGlynn Cauchon, Arlington resident. I'm speaking in favor of reforming the county's form of government. Arlington has long been a hotbed of good government style elected officials. We're an innovative county, the first locality in the Commonwealth to adopt ranked choice voting, a county that prioritized public transit focused transportation plans where everyone else wanted massive highways. This county's always been at the forefront of reform. Having watched you all over the course of your terms, I know you're all in that same line of progressive reformers. And so I encourage you to do the right thing and make a serious effort to change our government. As others mentioned, the structure that governs this county was set up long ago and has serious issues. While Arlington has grown into a major urban centers with all the complexities that come with that, our governing body has stayed small and stayed at large, despite an increasing diversity in our neighborhoods. My hometown of Granville, Ohio, population 5,946, has a larger legislative body than Arlington. To be clear, the issue lies with the structure, not any of your performances. The structure is just pushing the limits of our current capacity. A small, at-large body just cannot encompass the diverse perspective and lived experience our community all has, no matter how it works. Unlike some others, I don't have any specific system or model in mind. I think everyone should be open to ideas. I just think we need a thoughtful, honest look at whether our current government structure is still the best fit for Arlington in 2025 and beyond. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I've drawn an Arlington district map with 27 districts on Dave's redistricting and read about local government around the nation. So I'm very excited to see what could be proposed. So yeah, I respectfully urge you to do what you've always done and use your commitment to improving our community to begin a serious public conversation about whether the current structure is serving us well. Let's figure out what works best for Arlington, and let's try not to get bogged down in committee overload where endless committees look at it and referendums are held and people are consulted. I encourage you to all act quickly and decisively to make sure that we are governed correctly. Thank you again for your time and for your hard work and dedication in serving the community.
Thank you, Mr. Cauchon. The next speaker, please.
Yes, our next speaker is Michael Beer, followed by Mr. Christian Dorsey.
Good evening, Mr. Beer. You have to.
Good evening, Board.
Now.
Nice to be here.
Nice to see you all. I rise in support of this form of government effort. Thank you for your recent efforts in government and election reform. The institution of ranked choice voting and salary increases, for example, for county board members are excellent steps forward. But more improvements must be made. It's long past due to improve our diversity, which you don't actually explicitly mention in your document, and to improve civility, citizen engagement, and better governance. I am okay with deferring this until July because the schools cannot be an afterthought. The county governance and the school board governance are too intertwined in terms of elections and governance not to look at them together. For example, we have a bunch of folks here that are very taken with the idea of districts. And the way Virginia is set up, if we do districts for the county, we have to do districts for the school board. And the school board member last week told me if districts happened in the school board, it would be a catastrophe for the schools, particularly the schools of South Arlington. So they need to be done together. And so I would strongly recommend that this advisory commission be put together that include a mandate to look at also school governance and structure. Well, that's my major message today. I would also suggest that you may want to drop community engagement forms and civic infrastructure examinations. I just think it's a lot already, so I just think you might want to drop those components of this thing. The CivFed had some really good goals that I think you might want to take another look at. Again, I don't think a problem statement is needed. I think we just found that we can improve things, improve the quality of our elected officials' representation in policymaking, improve citizen engagement and voter turnout, improve the ability to reflect the diversity, the opinion and diversity of our communities, and to improve the quality and diversity of our candidates and campaigns. We also came upon a fifth goal, discovered one. We want anything that we come up with to improve the ability of the county board to hit above its weight in the DMV and state level. So in summary, we definitely, after 95 years, need to take a look at our democracy and elections and strongly support moving forward with this form of government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beer. The next speaker, Mr. Christian Dorsey. Good evening, Mr. Dorsey.
Good evening, Honorable Chair and members of the board. It's good to be with you. I'm having a strange sense of deja vu. But, look, I know this is a serious conversation, and I come to you seriously. We have significant issues in our community, among them widespread economic insecurity affecting residents due to turbulent labor market. You all are faced with constrained revenue outlooks looking forward into the future, and you don't have a financial cushion to indemnify us against any shocks that are yet to materialize, but we certainly expect. Effectively meeting these challenges is going to require the best of each of you individually and all of you collectively. And I do fear that engaging in this effort at this time reflects the kind of navel-gazing that is really ill-suited to our circumstances. Now, to be clear, I applaud each of you for wanting to figure out how we can do better as a government and how we can improve the way in which we deliver services. That is something that you can do right now. You should be doing right now. You should be doing continuously. But at the core, what this effort is all about is proposing to examine the way power is derived and how it is deployed. And that's a monumental undertaking, one that is certainly going to take a lot of resources. It should take a lot of time. And by necessarily, it should be not prescribed within a certain time frame in order to complete the work. I also am skeptical that the outcome of such an effort will produce the desired results that I've heard from so many earnest people here tonight. There is no form of government that has ever been invented that can ensure fulfillment of the noble goals that have been outlined in the Charter. That is the truth. And it is also true that even the best form of government will not in any way be a safeguard, an effective safeguard, if you have ineffective or malignant officials in charge. Now, thankfully, Arlington has had a long history of not having to suffer that fate. But if we do want to move forward with thinking about these large conversations about form of government and structure, please be aware that the draft charge that you have put together places a burden on a committee that I don't believe they will successfully be able to fulfill. The 5 goals outlined will require extensive literature review and data analysis, along with expert guidance and public opinion research before any thoughtful recommendations can be delivered. The draft documents seem to woefully underestimate the time and the fiscal resources and the staff resources that will be required to deliver a good product. And in the end, the question that this committee and you will have to address is whether this moves our committee forward, moves our community forward, and keeps us together. Lastly, but no less importantly, I will just say very quickly as I conclude, this document describes a process that is not inclusive. It welcomes those who have the privilege of having time and attention to pay to this matter, but it excludes those who are suffering from such insecurity that they can't effectively participate. So please take this time for review. This time you intend to defer to review the scope and what you intend this product to produce.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. The next speaker, please.
Of course. Next speaker is Mary Hines, followed by Audrey Clement.
Good evening, Ms. Hines.
Good evening, board members. It's nice to be here in this room. As Mr. Kushner said, my name is Mary Hines. In 1994, I was the first elected school board member in nearly 40 years in our community. And after 3 terms on that board, I joined the county board in 2008, where I served in this room through 2015. I'm speaking tonight for a number of former elected officials, including Mary Margaret Whipple, Judy Connolly, Bob Brink, Elaine Furlow, Jay Fassett, and Katie Crystal, many of whom are here in the room with us tonight. Some of our group are open to exploring structural changes in how the board works. Others do not think there's a problem. All of us had very deep concerns about the proposed charge and the board discussion that occurred last month. Most of us think that the board has far more pressing matters before it at this time, but we understand we are where we are. So thank you for taking the time over the last couple of weeks to listen and read and think. And I know that what you heard will guide you as you move forward judiciously and thoughtfully. We support you taking actions tonight that would provide you, the school board, and the community with foundational information prior to taking any next steps related to the structure and election processes of our 2 governing boards. We collectively support several key elements as you embark on this work. First, along with my fellow former school board members, we cannot overstate the importance of partnering fully with the school board on this topic. The success of Arlington stands on 2 key pillars: commitments to smart growth and excellent public education. Any changes to the county board structure or representation would, by virtue of state statute, apply to the school board. Thus, the boards must move in tandem to consider all next steps. Secondly, we support using the next 6 to 7 months to collect historical and legal background information. And in addition, we believe that conducting the community satisfaction survey this coming spring will provide community-wide statistically valid measures of resident satisfaction, as well as input on pressing issues before the community. Combined, these activities will provide the boards with helpful information. I said boards in the plural, and you're going to hear that all through with my statement. It will give the boards helpful information to assess if and how to proceed with an advisory panel charged with exploring the structural changes. Third, we support additional outreach. And finally, while none of those I speak for think our government is broken, we can, of course, always get better. However, in this moment, with so much influx at the federal and perhaps state level, if you ultimately do decide with the school board to create a joint advisory panel, do it with a narrow purpose and a clear charge focused on how the two boards are elected and structured, and whether changes to those elements will improve public trust and better serve all Arlingtonians. I know that you will work collectively with the school board to ensure that any panel you collectively appoint is representative of the whole community. So thank you for listening to our thoughts. I wish you well as you complete your discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. The next speaker, please, Dr. Clement.
The next speaker is Audrey
Good
Clement.
evening, Dr. Clement.
Yes. Good evening, members of the board. I'm Audrey Clement from Westover. The county says it wants to defer consideration of a charter for the advisory panel to examine Arlington County's form of government because the issue is controversial and opinion is divided. That argument is specious, since it's not the board's job to sort through a lot of mixed opinion. It's the panel's job to do that. The real reason that the county wants to kick the can down the road is that the change of governance that the panel might call for would likely upend the existing power structure. Consider that county board's at-large system of representation is as undemocratic in its operation as it was racist in its origins. According to local historian Sherman Pratt, the adoption of the current at-large system in 1930 was contemporaneous with the announcement by Black leaders of their plans to run for local office in one of the county's 3 districts. Replacing these districts with an at-large board thwarted Black political ambitions for several generations. Because board members are not accountable to their neighbors, it has also served to silence any neighborhood or civic organization that opposes county board on any matter, large or small. District representation would make it more difficult for the board to trample on the voters in a particular district if they were united in their response to a policy that affected their community. It would certainly be much harder to write them off as NIMBYs. Add to that the fact that the at-large county board is as unusual in its construction as it is undemocratic in its operation. No other county in the state enjoys this form of representation. An at-large board encourages the formation of manufactured majorities which defeat neighborhoods at every turn. This amounts to petty tyranny, and those who benefit have no intention of giving it up. Understood. Just don't weasel word your reason for deferring this important measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Clement. The next speaker, please.
Yes, our next speaker is Tanya Talento, followed by Mr. John Vistad.
Good evening, Ms. Talento.
Good evening, Chair Tarhonis, Vice Chair Matt DeFerranti, and county board members. Thank you so much for having me this evening. I am here to talk to you about my support for this charge. I do not believe that we are solving for a problem in government. I believe that our government exists to serve the people, to provide services to our community members, to ensure that there is order, there is ability to engage elected officials, to have a community that thrives with diversity and quality of life. And we have done an okay job. Many will say a good job. However, I've lived here since 1995 with a hiatus of 5 years. And I was only the second Latina to be elected to the school board. I was the second Hispanic person to serve on the county board as an appointed county board member, which was an honor. We've only had 3 Black representatives on the county board. When this form of government was established, it was at the height of racism and Jim Crow laws. We have to review our form of government. Change is hard, and the best way to avoid change is to ignore what is happening at the moment. We may decide that we have made amends and figured things out and everything is working great. But we can't know that if we don't study our history, if we don't review the processes that exist, if we don't have community engagement and education about what our government is in Arlington. I guarantee you the majority of our community members do not know that the county manager plan form of government is the only one in existence in the state of Virginia out of about 16 plans of government. So this is something that I think is important. And are we in a crisis in our country right now? We are. But I have never found hard change to come at a good time. Now, that being said, it is imperative that we include the school board in this discussion. It's just imperative. The school board is a separate governing body that depends on the county board taxes, but we are a partnership. Having served on both, I understand how we cannot function without each other, and we have to ensure that working together to support our community. I also want to make sure that we have a charge that does not presuppose outcomes. So I hope that as you review the charge, you keep it open. I had the privilege of serving on the Task Force for Governance and Election Reform called Tiger. I do not belong to my civic association. I do not belong to the Civic Federation. I was a community member who was asked to come and work on understanding our government and election reform, and I thought it was a great project. There's so much more to say. I will call you guys individually, but I just hope that you take this time to really engage the community, educate them, and use this time wisely as we wait for this deferral. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lento. The next speaker, please.
This is Mr. John Weistat, followed by Eric Berkey.
Good evening, Mr. Weistat. This looks like a reunion here.
Hi there. I'm John Weistat. Chair Karantonis and board members, thank you for the initiative to consider the establishment of the advisory panel to examine Arlington County's form of government. The board should vote yes to the advisory panel tonight and proceed. I also applaud Delegate Patrick Hope's bipartisan legislation in the Virginia General Assembly to further empower Arlington to have more authority over its own governments, rather than the status quo straitjacket of Arlington's current framework imposed by a Mother May I legislature. A straitjacket in removing districts is considered by many historians and current community members to have racist motivations. Passage of the Hope Bill along a parallel track with this advisory panel will help provide direction and purpose to the new community conversation. As a former county board member and as an original member of the Arlington Tiger Group stood up by the Civic Federation, I want to stress a few key points and debunk some common arguments by those who came to power under the current system and who apparently feel quite threatened by even the discussion of change. First, there is a crisis in confidence at all levels of our federal system, and Arlington is not immune. We can feel it. Arlington is constrained by a form of government set in amber 100 miles down the road in Richmond 100 years ago, when Arlington had a 1930 census of 26,000 people. Then, 5 county board members, or roughly 1 member for 5,000 people. Now, 5 county board members, or roughly 1 member for 48,000 people. This new advisory panel demonstrates that we're not content to rest on our laurels, but are ambitious and humble enough to seek constant improvement. Number 2, this conversation will not divert resources from other community needs and there are ready organizations and expertise to tap. Vice Chair DeFerrante is on the board of VACO, the Virginia Association of Counties. And NACO is another organization that has already done a great deal of study in this area. Matt Chase, a longtime Arlington resident, is the current CEO of NACO, and as your constituent, I'm sure he'd be ready to roll up his sleeves. Number 3, districts are not synonymous with division. No, districts don't have to mean warring fiefdoms represented by parochial or narrow-minded interests. They can mean smaller geographic areas where there are lower barriers to entry, reduced campaign costs, and more intimate connections between residents and their leaders. Many localities surrounding us have a hybrid system, some at large, some by district. Let's be true to ourselves and embrace local decision-making here tonight. Our county's legislative platform calls for local decision-making in just about everything. Why not this? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weistat. The next speaker, please.
Is Eric Berkey, followed by John Milliken.
Good evening, Mr. Berkey.
I don't have to adjust it. All right, great. For the record, I'm Eric Berkey. I live in Douglas Park, and I'm very glad I didn't have to go right after Christian Dorsey. No, I just want to say I appreciate and respect the viewpoints of a lot of folks, well, everyone who's come here tonight and weighed in. I think you've had hundreds of emails and interactions, all have taken meetings. So I think that that's critical, right, to starting this conversation. So I've been taking notes because I've heard a lot of areas of agreement tonight. So just a few thoughts that I have. So I've heard a lot of folks who either support deferral or support moving forward right now talk about how they want a careful, thoughtful examination of the challenges with our governance model. That's been a theme that I've heard. A lot of folks are rightfully demanding that we examine opportunities for a more diverse county board. We've heard that across the board as well. We've heard several speakers talk about the desire not to predetermine outcomes if we do a process. We've heard about a lot of folks, I would say almost universal support for a diverse composition of an advisory panel when you impanel it. A lot of folks, nearly everybody, has talked about robust public engagement. And I think we probably have some disagreement about how we get there, but I think that's a desire. And I've heard several folks, last few, have talked about the need to be open to ideas in this process. So I think we've got a lot already where we can seek agreement, and then the challenge for us is figuring out how do we synthesize that and put that together in a process that that works, right? That really has the trust of our community. We're not going to create something that satisfies everybody, but clearly there's a lot of opinions right now, and taking the time to absorb them and to go out into the community and have more thoughtful conversations about this is a pretty prudent move. I certainly am sympathetic and appreciate the concerns of some folks about, kicking the can down the road and not doing this at all. And I think that's a reasonable concern from folks who want to act now. And so I think it's imperative that the county board do establish some timeframes or expectations for the community on a process. I think my main asks are twofold here. I think leadership is really what we need from our county board. And I think, to your great credit, you've had a lot of conversations and have been listening. And I think that's essential. I think we need leadership on scoping. I think we need leadership on resources, as Mr. Dorsey and others have spoken to, and Ms. Hines. But the other thing that we need in that leadership is a model of a respectful conversation where we are open to changing our minds. We're not prejudging folks' intentions or their attitudes simply because we may disagree with them. We need a process that is the county's, that is not from any independent organization or delegate, that is ours, that we own, that we move forward on. And I respectfully support deferral, and I think we can get there. I think there's a path for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Berkey. The next speaker, please.
Is John Milliken, followed by Adam Theo.
Good evening, Mr. Milliken.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is John Milliken. I live on South Arlington Ridge Road, and I am among those who think taking a fresh look at Arlington's governmental structure is a good idea. Since the county manager plan was adopted, we've done this several times. The board has initiated reviews of various aspects of our structure 5 times, and the community, whether it's the Civic Federation or the Committee of 100 or a group of the civic associations, have looked at this innumerable times. Sometimes all of this study has resulted in changes, beneficial ones for the most part, sometimes not. Sometimes the panels have come back and recommended no change. But it still makes sense to take a fresh look, not to ask whether this plan has worked well in the last 95 years. It has. We know that. All the studies show that it has. The question is it the right structure looking forward to the next 95 years? I'm not going to be here, but those who are shaping the county need to think in those terms. And I suggest we start the process by asking ourselves, what questions are we trying to answer with this study? I think there are at least 3. One, is the decision-making process at the board level disadvantaged by the absence of a designated executive leader, somebody in charge? The manager is the head of the administrative and professional staff. The collective board is the legislative body. The chair, selected annually by the board, doesn't have a particular popular mandate. The question is, does the absence of a designated leader with that mandate disadvantage Arlington, either internally within the community or in its relationships with other jurisdictions around the region? That's question number one. Question number two, would our various communities be better served by the election of board members by district or by some hybrid system, charging one board member in some cases with responsibility for a smaller slice of Arlington's geography? And related to that, would the community be better served by less frequent elections, perhaps by shifting some or all of the board positions to run in years when the numbers of voters are at their highest? After all, at the outset, we need to make sure that one thing is not on the table, and that is the important principle of a government run by a professionally selected, non-political staff, subject to the guidance of the elected body. That was the major reason most people agree to the formation of the county manager plan in the beginning. So in summary, I think you're on the right course. Don't rush it. Gather the important background in phase one, make the charge clear, give the advisory panel time to do its work, task the panel with engaging the community, appoint people who have a county-wide perspective and who will bring a fresh look to the question.
Thank
you
Mr.
very
Milliken.
much.
The next speaker, please.
The last of our 3-minute speakers, and then we'll circle back to any who were missed, is Adam Theo.
Good evening, Mr. Theo.
Good evening, county board members. Well, there are a lot of specific opinions that have been shared so far through this process. Districts versus at-large, elected chair versus even a mayor, how many county board members should there be, role of ranked choice voting and things like that. But all of those questions are putting the cart before the horse, because right now before you, there are really 3 questions or 3 tasks that you have to resolve. Define specifically what the problems this potential change of form of government is meant to solve. After all, a good problem statement and defining those problems helps keep this advisory group on task, focused, and free from being devolved into being torn in all these different directions. So a good problem statement is critical for this. But you should also allow the advisory group to prioritize or rank those problems. After all, solving some problems will conflict with solving with other problems. So give the advisory group some flexibility in how to decide where the efforts or what the solutions should be when deciding what problems to solve in what order. Also, lay out exactly the scope of changes the advisory board can consider and propose. I much favor a expansive and largely open-ended scope. After all, there are a lot of ideas, a lot of solutions. If you prematurely restrict things early on, then you run the risk of delegitimizing the results from this advisory group. So give them the flexibility to decide what the proposed solutions should actually be. And demonstrate and determine exactly what the advisory group is responsible for delivering and on what time frame. Those milestones, even internally, of whatever end deadline there should be, will be critical to deciding, to helping with the buy-in and making sure this whole process stays on track. There's never a perfect time to start this effort unless you have a time machine. It was, last year or 2 years. So with that, now is the time to start the process. Even if it is to take an extra few months to define the problem statement, lay out the broad scope, and set the deliverables and timeframes. That's good. Once the charter is refined, then the other questions will be resolved by those you select to fill the advisory group and lead it. And I'll leave with this piece of advice. Try not to let the voices of negativity from those who have come and gone already restrict what you are deciding today. Do not let them restrict the scope, the size, or even the very existence of this effort. The status quo served them well. Many, many more voices are telling you that the status quo does not work. Listen to those many, many voices telling you that we need a change in government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Theo. As I stated before, because I see some of the speakers who have signed up for previous testimony, we will call them at the end, or are we at the 5 minutes?
The end of this segment was.
Okay, then let's do that at the end of this segment. So
It
who
being
would
now
be
again 3 minutes,
who
so
would
I
be
would
here?
say Mr. Robert Welsh Jr., if he has found his way here.
Mr. Welsh Jr.
Going once, going twice. I would move next to Miss Judith Davis, who I believe I see in the audience.
Ms. Davis. Good evening, Ms. Davis.
Thank you for allowing me to still make my comments.
Thank you for coming
Stuck in
all the way
traffic.
here.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone.
Your microphone is either very, yes.
Yes.
Let's make sure that it's on. Just tap it. Yes, it's on. Fine.
Yes.
We can hear you.
All right. Good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm here today to remind you of some of the comments you made in previous board meetings. You have washed your hands in acknowledgement of what previous county boards and their governing bodies have done, the harm they have caused to the community, to the various communities in Arlington. And you have made a promise to look into some of the structural things that cause this harm and to take actions to not undo them, because you can't do that anymore, but to ensure that it doesn't happen in the future. And yet we're here discussing, and more than that, really admiring the current governance structure you have, without acknowledging that we have to look at the disparities that it's causing. Your system is not broken. The governance structure is not broken. It is designed to produce the results that it's producing. And somehow people are, and some of you included, are fighting to uphold the same governance structure that is causing you to change school names, building names, the county logo, and put up plaques at every corner in Arlington, as if that's going to undo the harm that has been done. The only way the harm can be undone is we recognize the disparities that it has caused and understand that structural and systemic issues must be dismantled and abolished. And we must ask ourselves, what does it look like to govern Arlington the way it needs to be governed in order for generations of leaders in the future to be successful? What type of governance do we need in order for us to ensure that we're representative of all generations and populations in Arlington? Currently, we're looking to uphold the very same systems that are guilty of displacing people, of causing harm and breaking families apart, and ensuring that structural differences prevail in terms of education, housing, healthcare, you name it. You all are here after making campaign promises to ensure that you're representative of Arlington's populations, saying you're the youngest, the only Black county board member, the only woman, means absolutely nothing if we don't see a difference in how you govern and represent Arlington's residents, all of them, not just the 53% versus the 47%, and disparities and historical markers in terms of the first or the last should make us recognize that the system as it was designed doesn't serve us anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Do we miss any other speaker from the previous list?
I do not believe so.
Only Mr. Welsh, and
is
this
with
will
us
be
now.
the last call. Then let's proceed with our 5 minutes. Mr. Jacobi. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Schwartz, Mr. Clerk, Mr. County Attorney. I'm Nick Giacobbe. I'm the president of the Arlington County Civic Federation, and I'm speaking in that capacity this evening. As many of you know, CivFed was founded in April 1916 and has been advocating for civic betterment and served as a nonpartisan forum to discuss local Arlington issues ever since. CivFed played an active role a century ago in the formation of our current government, especially the novel county manager form of government, which was the very first in the nation. We've heard a lot of commentary and opinions tonight about whether or not we should undertake an examination of our current form of government. I want you to know that CivFed continues to strongly advocate recruiting and charging a task force to move forward with this effort. CivFed stands ready to assist with this effort as part of a two-step approach. First, in Virginia, the county manager form of government is unique to Arlington. And our section of the Virginia Code does not grant Arlington voters and the leaders the authority to determine procedures of our government already available to peer jurisdictions across our Commonwealth. In order to correct this inequity, we need to focus on adoption of legislation such as that passed last year and introduced by Delegate Patrick Hope. This bill will do nothing but give Arlington the same authority to consider our government options as is enjoyed by other jurisdictions across Virginia. That's the key. It's just leveling up our authorities as a jurisdiction. We do not support the idea that legislation should be postponed until there is a study and community consensus on potential changes to the form of government. The bill passed last year and was vetoed by the governor, so we think it's a good idea to try again this year, and it will probably have a good chance of passing. Second, we're asking you, our elected leaders, to support recruitment of a task force to examine Arlington's form of government as contemplated in your November meeting, but with a bit more focus to the charter. We need a thoughtful approach to evaluating our current structure, its strengths, its weaknesses, and potential areas for improvement. I saw compelling arguments likening the process to the annual performance evaluation system. Everyone sees benefit in that process and finds the time necessary in their busy schedules to do performance evaluations. Similarly, that's the purpose of a community study or a task force, and once every century doesn't seem like it's too often. Concerns for equitable and proportional representation of groups within the community were behind the work of CivFed's Tiger Committee on Form of Government, and we hope the task force will take the advantage of Tiger's findings and substantial written record. That report remains CivFed's position on form of government at this point. We're concerned that the scope of work for the task force should not be so broad as to inhibit focus on the primary assignment, examining our local government and considering ways to improve it. We're glad to see a robust community discussion on this topic since the last hearing. It's fitting that we have a thoughtful discussion about our democracy as we approach our nation's semi-quincentennial. After all, this effort and democracy itself can only be successful with widespread community participation. And you noted that last night, Mr. Chairman, when you talked about the origins and importance of democracy. The concern that the task force will consume bandwidth which the board needs to devote to the complicated state and local policy environments ignores the time frame in which the intense board involvement would be required. It will actually be when the task force report is delivered rather than at the outset of the examination process. Once the task force is established, they should be able to work fairly independently of the board. In conclusion, CivFed asked the board to consider support for the immediate passage of the Hope Bill and that it pass a motion setting up a task force to examine our form of government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobi. I see.
And our next and final 5-minute speaker is Ms. Stacy Meyer, joining virtually.
Good evening, Ms. Meyer.
Hi, can you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can
Go
you
ahead.
Okay, good evening, Chair Takis. Good evening. Thank you for your opportunity to speak virtually this evening. I'm Stacy Meyer, I'm president of the Aurora Highlands Civic Association, and you all know me for advocating for the association's opposition to the Melwood proposal to tear down historic Nellie Custis School and its mature landscaping, including the iconic Christmas tree, and building an inadequately parked 70-foot-tall building, which will create congestion and tower over the neighborhood of low-slung bungalows. The Civic Association did everything possible to engage with you regarding the project, but have been ignored. We voted against the project nearly unanimously. We are nearly unanimous in our support of the local historic district, and we have participated in committees, surveys, and petitions. But instead of listening to us, you decided last February to double down on the position that you have no obligation to the comp plan, the GLUP, our neighborhood conservation plan. And that means you doubled down that you have no obligation to us either. That was really disheartening, and it felt like betrayal of everything the county claims to support in terms of representation. The Civic Association approved and submitted an alternative envelope for the Melwood site, which provides adequate parking and retains a historic school and mature landscaping. It is a substantial size for economies of scale, but still fits in the neighborhood. The alternative envelope is a good compromise. It's good urban planning. It's good governance. Yet you ignored it. As others stated tonight, the lack of representation for the constituents of South Arlington stems from those racist beginnings of the at-large setup. You know what really stinks is the county has never cared about South Arlington. Buildings like the Roach Estate, Luna Park, communities like Queen City have all been torn down in the past, become some developer for special interest, and a well-connected lawyer got the ear of an at-large board member. And it's happening again now, again. You're studying how to preserve the historic Lee Arts School in North Arlington, but approved a site plan for demolition of Nellie Custis School in South Arlington, when there is need for more, not less, public space given all the growth in the area. Tell me how that is fair. I got JD's email today, which is why I called in. Tell me how it's equitable. I'm sorry to say that this county board has no right to clutch pearls over what's happening at the White House ballroom when the same disregard for constituents and expectations happens right here in Arlington. Except the difference is this Melwood proposal for our low-density historic neighborhood is much bigger than what is being proposed. It's much, much bigger than what's being proposed at the ballroom in commercial downtown DC, 150,000 square feet versus 90,000 square feet. I've worked on many projects in DC as a real estate developer, and I can say with confidence that the ANC and district-based ward system provides that it is very unlikely that projects are approved without full neighborhood support. And I found as a developer that ANCs are very reasonable to work with on projects. Mayor Bowser has famously met her very high housing and her very high affordable housing goals within this system. It is done with compromise, by digging into the details, and by holding developers accountable. There are so many great stories coming out of DC in regards to economic development. The Wharf, the sports venues, the Bard School, St. Elizabeth's, all done within the ANC system with resident representation. And that's how they do it. The problem statement is, why is the county repeatedly sued? Why is there a disconnect? Why are the schools inequitable? The answer is simple, because the at-large system does not provide equitable representation and special interests fill in. We need district representation, and this Melwood proposal to tear down Nellie Custis School is a textbook example of why. This proposal to tear down this school would never happen in DC, period. Please think about what you are here to do, which is to represent us, your constituents. The fact that the current system is set up to do exactly the opposite, and it is unfortunately working as planned. Please have the courage to finally fix this and find a way to come to a reasonable solution for the Nellie Custis School before it too is torn down to a pile of bricks and the opportunity is forever lost. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer. Mr. Kushner, do we have more?
At this point, we have no further speakers. We do not.
We don't. Then colleagues, if I'm correct, some of you asked for a short recess for consultation. I would grant that for 5 minutes. Okay, we are in recess. I would ask 3 of us to be in the front at all time, if possible, if we can bring them in. Yes. It is always very useful to sometimes to put a little recess after public testimony. It gives everybody time and space to think. It's amazing how human beings need to do this processing, post-processing, in order to recalibrate their thoughts. So it is not only working for everybody on this side of this dais, but also for this people on this side of this dais. So thank you for affording us this space. We are back from recess. Colleagues, we heard public testimony, and if I understand the desires of the board correctly, we want to have a round of reaction from each board member, and I will take the first light that I see, and this is Mr. Spains.
Well, I was going to say that probably anything less would be uncivilized, Mr. Chair, but thank you very much. And one, thank you to everyone who is tuning in today and has been involved, not just in the past 30 some odd days, but over the past decades, as you in one way, shape, or form have been monitoring or evaluating and looking at our current form of government. So in my comments, which I know I'm going to yield to my colleagues to talk a little bit, because I probably can go in this for 30 minutes, but I want to try to be somewhat succinct and clear and concise on it. You know, this is not new to me, okay? This conversation about form of government, I've been here 17 years, and I remember quite vividly about 3 years ago, when CFED started having this conversation, I started tuning in, right, to see what it was all about. Then I started doing some research and history on the case. That being said, I talked about this on the campaign, and Ms. Davis, you kind of reminded us in a tender manner of what we said. It's on my website. I got asked questions about it during many campaign events. I actually talked about it in the organizational meeting when I got sworn in. So this is not like breaking news for me. What I believe wholeheartedly in is that we do owe ourselves somewhat of a self-reflection and conversation about our form of government, given that you've heard from many folks today, and I've heard and seen over the past 30 some odd days, at least by emails, hundreds of emails, about the foundation of our government and how it was constructed. Now, I may be the only professional, I would say, that is certified, what you want to call DEIA. Thank you to George Mason. Many years ago, I was trained on that. But what I will say is this, that any system that is built and constructed unjustly can never be just until you evaluate it. And I will argue also that in the past 90 some odd years, it's taken us that long to get to this moment. And I just want to applaud every citizen, good, bad, and different, those that are for, those that are against, that have been part of this process to date and have let their voices being heard. When we talk about representation matters, we realize that we're going to hear from a lot of folks, and everyone's not going to be aligned with the way I think or what I believe. But my job as a leader is to listen. And I think what you're going to hear here tonight is that we collectively as a board have been listening to you. And so tonight we talked, what I heard was a lot about equity and representation and inclusion, necessary reviews of our form of government, the advisory panel with some conditions, debates over whether now or to defer, some support, some do not, process, quality, structure, scope, leadership, governance, responsibility, being bold, being brave, showing leadership, the role of schools and education, APS, as we endeavor and push out on this, all that stands true. And so what I take from this as I prepared to pass on to my colleagues for their words is that, many community leaders, from civic leaders to longtime residents to historically Black neighborhoods and folks who have been here 5 generations, have raised serious concerns about how Arlington examines our form of government. And what we are doing here tonight, I think, is really setting up a community first, equity centered, and well-resourced process, which I think over the past 30 days, my colleagues and I have really thought carefully about and have, lended our ear to some very wise counsel to many of the electeds in this space in Arlington. So with that being said, Mr. Chair, I'm going to pass it on. Again, I'm just thankful to everyone who's provided some input, and I know we'll have a second round shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Spain. I see Mr. DeFerranti as a second, or Ms. Cunningham, who wants to go first?
Ms. Cunningham, go for it.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you all for being here, and to the many folks who weren't able to be here tonight but sent us, I think, 350 pages the last time I thought about printing it and didn't, of great content and feedback, as well as to those who've been thinking about it for much longer than that and prepared documents that many of us have read across time. I heard a couple of themes here tonight, and they reinforce what I've heard over the last year, really, but especially in the last couple of months. One is that we have to do any work around building democracy with a foundation of inclusive engagement, and that's very much engagement with our school community, which is crucial in this case, as many have mentioned, from state law, but really with our whole community. And that's great to say, it's hard to do. And so Ms. Coffey and I have been lucky enough to ride along with staff on the master transportation plan and the recent comprehensive plan kind of discussions for maybe doing interchapter. And the work and care that we've put into it in attempting to have deep engagement has included hiring community liaisons with different language bases, having multiple different settings, going to people where they are. And even with all that, we get kind of small turnout, smaller than we envision in our grand dreams. So I hear that in equitable engagement. I think we are still inventing that as we go. This topic of all topics really has to get that right. And so I think to do that, we're going to need to move purposefully, but not necessarily speedily, in order to broaden the engagement, deepen the engagement, educate, as I think you said, Ms. Koch said about, living here 30, 40 years before quite realizing what it is the county board does. There's a lot of education to be done. And the other themes I've heard in all of the work here is that we should make sure that we have a groundwork of foundational information first, so that everyone's starting from a similar situation, and that we have the facts as well as some of the feelings to work from. And then finally, that the whole goal here, the problem statement, if you would, is to continue to invest in a democracy and structure that builds trust, that honors equity, that requires accountability, and fundamentally delivers high-quality services to our community for now and into the future. So I'll stop there and hand off.
Thank you. Vice Chair DeFerranti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be brief, but I'm going to try and be specific. I have some prepared remarks later. I'll say Ms. Nadia Conyers is not here, but she called history in a way that, even if you didn't agree with everything she said, I thought was powerful. And Tim Houston, you are here. You are so narrow and specific with suggestions, and I want to say I'm particularly grateful for that. It's easier to get into big thinking instead of specifics. Daniel Weir is not here, and broadly, he and I aren't lean on different sides, but he was darn compelling. And particularly, the juxtaposition of saying we should do this when is the right time was really powerful for me. Those who I don't mention, I ask for your grace, but Alan Gadjahar, framing this in our 250th year is powerful for me, and the way that you did in your run through of the 14th Amendment, super grateful. Anika Tanay, your last sentence revealed a different conclusion than I thought you were going to say the entire time you spoke, which proves your point that we should not prejudge our conclusion, but instead, in my view, engage in the work. Christian Dorsey is not here. I always find he's got this strong mind. You know, when I've got sort of a bleeding heart, he sometimes calls me to account for a strong mind for what's there. I think his points are well taken. Mary Hines, our schools are one of our most precious resources, and so I think there might be other lawyers who might reach different conclusions, and eventually we need to surface the full law on this. But I do think the partnership is super helpful. I'm grateful for those comments. I won't mention everybody here, but I will just work towards wrapping up with Eric Berkey. You and I sometimes have great conversations that include me having an opinion in the first 10 seconds, and then we work out. I appreciate the thoughtfulness that there could be a path. I'm very grateful. And Mr. Milliken, your intellectual questions are precise and they're humbling. And there are others who've spoken strongly, and I hope I haven't spoken too much. But as I took all the notes from each of you, and I do have notes on every person who spoke, those themes struck me. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Chair Ferranti. I see the light of Ms. Coffey.
Thank you. We've gotten a lot, relatively speaking, between when we left here in November and when we got here today. And, I think while there are many different opinions about the speed at which we do any of this work, I hope that it is understandable that to appropriately do justice to the community feedback in this kind of a timeline, in this kind of a time when we had a 9.5-hour Saturday meeting over a very complicated, very critical land use issue, and we had budget guidance to be working on because that has to happen now, that we perhaps did not have adequate time to get all of our ducks in a row and navigate the many, many sticky issues that have been surfaced by so many here today, and even more that were surfaced in the correspondence that was given to us ahead of time. And I think, that really, to me, highlights one of the themes here, which is even the people who want us to do this as quickly as possible want us to do this with care. And they want us to do it right, and they want us to get it right. And I think that to me really needs to dominate all discussions of this, right? This isn't about winning. This isn't about coming out on top and being, on the side that got their way. This is about getting it right. And that really, I would like to bring that tone back to this conversation, because I think that we have devolved a little bit into the tribalism that so often plagues civic engagement, which is it's my way or your way, and those things are incompatible. I think so many things that everyone said here today can all be true all at once. It is not about saying, I'm right, you're wrong, my perspective is valid, yours is not valid. It's about saying, we are all individuals who have come here from different places, different spaces, different times, and different perspectives. And all of those are real, and they're all important. And that's what has led me to so much concern and care for how we go about this, because it does matter who is able to comment, who is able to participate, who is able to feel heard. There are so many civic spaces where we say is welcoming and inclusive, and it does not actually feel that way. When you show up, as I have in so many of our civic spaces, 20 plus years younger than the next youngest person to participate, it does not always feel comfortable to actually say what you think, and sometimes when you do, people look at you like they want to pat you on the head. And that's not particularly great feeling. And so to set up successful spaces, to do the inclusive engagement that Ms. Cunningham has been talking about, that we have kind of seen our staff enact on staff-led matters, doesn't happen on accident, and it doesn't happen quickly. It happens with planning and intentionality and iterations and going back again and again and again to build trust and relationships. You can't do that in 1 month. And when I think about so many of the people in my sphere, when I think about the friends I have in my building hallway who half of them don't even know that I am on the county board, which is fine by me, but when I think about the people posting in my building's Facebook page asking what the city of Clarendon is going to do about the sidewalk, I think we have to recognize that those people are also impacted by anything that this task force or advisory group or change of government could create. And how do we make sure that those people have even a chance to say, I might have thoughts about this, or I might not. And that's okay too, but they need the chance and the opportunity. And so to me, slowing down isn't saying no, it's saying get it right. And that is so much more important, and I hope it is more important to everyone in this room than just proceeding because you think you're right. It is about serving the community, and sometimes serving the community means taking a step back, reflecting, and then choosing to go with intention. So I think we'll have more discussion about specifics, but I forgot one thing, which is the dismissiveness of some of the very real criticisms when I say, all of our perspectives can exist together. I think most of you all were not in this room, though maybe one or two of you were yesterday, when the manager shared with us that for the current fiscal year that we are in today, we are missing our revenue projections by $12 million. That is not even the next fiscal year. That means that we have to delay or cut things we plan to do in the current fiscal year if we do not recover those budget gaps. When you say we can just do this without resources, or that we can find the resources, we can make the resources happen, we are already having to find or force the resources for so many other things. And so I really caution us to not be dismissive that this county is just always going to have money to find to do important things. I hope we will. I hope we will find a way to get through this budget cycle and to continue to prioritize the things that we need. But it's not easy, and the reality is we may not have all of the things that we want. And so while it may not to you be the most important thing, or it may not be dissuasive or dispositive that we should move forward, let's not dismiss out of hand that it is a legitimate concern and something that has to be considered, because I consider that one of my biggest responsibilities as a board member is to make sure that I am using public funds responsibly and prioritizing them where it best serves our community. We can have valid disagreements about what best serving the community means as far as where money goes, but I think it is okay to accept that that is a valid criticism and a valid concern at this moment in time, given the truly historic place that we are in with our financial resources. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coffey. Leaves my light, and I will use the next 2 hours to elaborate. First of all, thank you so much for being here. Actually, it's a personal note here. I know you both, residents and former elected officials, etc. You are part of the salt of this town, and it is very elevating to think that you're focused and are in discussion of this. And you do that not because you care about yourself, but because you care about everybody else. A personal confession. In 2012, I was naturalized as a U.S. citizen, so I wanted to go to vote. And in 2012, at the same time, somebody, and I was working for CPRO, the Columbia Pike Revitalization Organization back then, and we were organizing the Blues Fest, and somebody came and said, oh, we need to have a lot of canvassers out on the Blues Fest because they were collecting signatures to change the government and fire the county manager. I was looking at them as somebody who arrived in Arlington several years before, but I was in a welcoming, inclusive place very different than my experience in Texas and Tennessee. I can tell you that. And I was saying, what? And then I found out that who was doing that was for a reason. And the reason was, well, a union wanted to be able to negotiate their salaries with somebody who's less, easier to get, more elected, easier to get. So this didn't go very far because, you know, people who were basically crooks tried to set it up, so it didn't go anywhere. And as Mr. Milliken reminded us, this has happened in Arlington many times. In the 70s, there was a bill that was very similar to what we see from Delegate Hope today. Tom Michie in Charlottesville in 1978 wanted to do the same. He wanted to have that every county has districts, and they have also biannual elections, etc. And actually, Ellen Bozeman would go down to Richmond to explain why Arlington is in a different place in political, and why the General Assembly should respect that, and they did. In 1980, there was a Republican board here, and they tried to do the same. And the county board has reacted many times to that. And by the way, the last time the county board, this county board, 2 members of this county board are still here, who reacted to that was when the Tiger process happened, Mr. Jacoby. And one of the recommendations of the Tiger project, and I think a fundamental game changer, is introducing and establishing ranked choice voting in Arlington. So I can hear a lot of criticism here, but one is just not accurate. We haven't been sitting on our hands, and we haven't been just looking across and resisting change for any reason. We have been listening all the time, and actually we took very courageous steps forward. Ranked choice voting is a proportional system for those who have this preoccupation. And it is now the law for all primaries, and I very much hope that very soon will be the law for all generals. And I can look back to my election and see I had a total of 5 opponents. Arlingtonians had a lot of choices, and very regionalized, by the way, as a result. So I heard the testimony with a lot of respect, and I made many notes. Like Vice Chair DeFerranti, Nadia Conyers resounds very important, as a very important testimony here. Ms. Tenet, thank you, and Ms. Davis, thank you. You remind me of one thing, and I learned that as an immigrant here. You remind me that, you know, equity and disparities and inequalities are definitely a result of a crooked system, of a system that was rigged to produce these inequalities and perpetuate them. The problem for the politics today, for governing here, for making sure that we serve the people of Arlington, everybody, and those who need it the most first, is what we do with the results of that. The results in the wealth gap. If I have to name today an inequity that concerns me and doesn't let me sleep at night because it's so difficult and challenging, is economic inequality. That's the #1 problem. And at the end, I believe that Mr. Dorsey is right when he says, oh, at the end it's about power and influence and leverage. So this is a reason to be very careful about who enters this process and whether for every single one, the minorities, us immigrants, the vulnerable minorities, LGBTQ and queer minorities, the low and moderate income households, we have to ask ourselves if anything we start that will change the fundamental ways that we govern, whether in this process they will be in a safe space where they will be respected and allowed in. And unless I am absolutely certain that this is the case, I'm not going to agree for them to be exposed to yet another systemic disadvantage at the end. So for this reason, I'm really grateful to my colleagues of having actually started that, because another thing is also true. We wouldn't be here discussing that if we wouldn't have a majority that said, okay, let's put it on the surface, let's have an open discussion, let's make it public, let's stimulate input here. And we stimulated a lot, and we will continue to stimulate. I'm very grateful to my colleagues that despite the fact that they have logically very different approaches to any question related to that, they came together, worked together very intensively over the last days, and they figured out, and I'm part of this effort, a way forward for our community that, to me at least, seems to at least guarantee a safe space for all invited participants. So I would like to open that for a motion.
Well, yes, Mr. Chair. Before I run, I do have a few things, and I'm going to bring up, not just a second, Mason, but just give me a second. There's a lot for all of us to digest in these conversations. And I think what's unique is that, again, you're hearing it here today. We all come from uniquely different lived experience. So it does take working together in unity in order for us to chart the art of the possible. And kind of getting out of our silos. But I will tell you, my decision and where I have arrived is not shaped by just reading a history lesson or a piece from a person by the name of Platt. It is to folks that you said, like Nadia Conyers, who's come up today, and the countless emails we receive, you know, organizations like the Black Coalition of Clergy and WOFA and NAACP, and so many other folks in the CivFed and Marguerite Gooden, folks like that, and Edith Gravely. You know, I've sat down at kitchen tables over the years and talked to folks, many who've been here for a long time. And so I think this is, what we're about to do here, I think is the right, is right for the moment. And Mr. Clerk, if you don't mind pulling up the screen. Here we go. So for those that are watching, I'm going to go through this a little bit, Mr. Chair, and then we can do the motion on the backside after I explain it.
Yeah.
Is
it all right if they distribute it?
Yeah. Go ahead and distribute it to those who are here. And this is also going to be shared online. So what we're going to do, we've listened as a board, and I think what you will see here is an agreement among the board members how we're going to take what's going to happen over the next 6 months. And so as this examination of Arlington County's board and performance, we are going to direct some of the following actions to provide the board with foundational information to access how to proceed, whether to craft a charge for an advisory panel, and to examine Arlington's board structure and performance. This chart before you is somewhat of a time graphic, where you'll see in December, we started with an initial launch. In Q1, we're going to do some additional work, which I'm going to talk about here. In Q2, we're going to gather some input and review. And then we're going to come back at the recess meeting in July, right, with some next steps. But let me be very pointed. Can you flip to the next screen, Mr. Clerk, so folks can read this for themselves? Here it is. It's on the back, and those that are watching in. We are laying out what the county managers shall do, implement Arlington's next research-based community satisfaction survey. We've heard from our community about that. And spring of 2026 with board review and some planned questions that are going to be correlated directly to this engagement with form of government. We're going to identify sufficient resources to ensure that all actions in the motion that I'm going to make here shortly are completed in a timely manner. And to our county attorney who's here with us, we're going to complete a legal research and provide a written report, readable in lay audience, that summarizes Arlington's current form of government under Virginia law and government structures used in other counties and cities, the current process by which Virginia jurisdictions with populations over 150,000, including Arlington, can legally change their own structure, i.e. number of seats, districts versus at large, timing of elections, the election of the chair, any impact that we may do on the structure and authorities of the Arlington School Board. We've heard the concern about the school board and the constitutional officers that would result from taking any of the actions above, and any change in governmental authorities and liabilities that will result from Arlington changing from a county to a city. And for our clerk, we're stating that the clerk shall provide general information on an interest form on the county board website via Arlington County email, our listserv, our social media, and directly to the standing advisory boards and commissions, and engage in a nonpartisan external research partner to analyze the history of current Arlington government structure and civic engagement. And then the clerk will identify no later than March 15th the financial resources and procurement process to support this external research. The research partner, you may be asking, shall analyze and report on the historical background report to analyze the history of the current Arlington government structure and how that shapes Arlington governance and public participation today. The feedback evaluation that we've received, and you've heard earlier about 300 and some odd pages, or emails in particular that we've received, we're going to review and summarize community feedback received to date and recommend future community engagement methods and questions. And then we're going to identify key concepts and questions to consider in future efforts. And lastly, the county board shall engage with the school board as a key partner, and with the Arlington Electoral Board as an advisor. Consider the foundational information gathered in these activities to assess how to proceed, including whether to craft a charge for an advisory panel to examine Arlington County's board structure and performance, and to report back publicly in July 2026 at the recess meeting of the county board. And lastly, designate board member Spain, myself, and board member Cunningham as county board liaisons to this process. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to end this with a motion for us to do all this, and I know we'll have discussion, but my motion is that I move that the county board commits to these initial efforts as detailed in the proposed document entitled Examination of Arlington County's Board Structure and Performance.
Thank you, Mr. Spain. Is the motion seconded?
Second.
It's seconded by Board Member Cunningham. We are in discussion. I assume that that was the speech that you spoke already to the motion. Colleagues, I see the light of Ms. Coffey.
Sure, I can start. Didn't expect that, but that's okay. I think everyone hopefully will see a little bit of something in this, and probably no one will be exactly happy. And I think it really reflects an immense number of hours across the five of us, an immense number of discussions and edits and drafts and versions and compromise that we have all gone through to get to something that I think, even if we aren't all getting everything we want, we're getting something that feels good, solid, and that we can live with, and that it gets things moving without presupposing any outcomes. I think some of the things that have come up across the last month in conversations, as much as I appreciate how often you all try, it is not the public's job to give us legal advice. And so we really do need to make sure that we have a foundational legal assessment from the person whose job it is to give us that legal advice. There are things that, we really need to make sure we are doing in a structured and intentional way. And I think also over the next 6 months, a lot more will become clear to us on resources and availability, and it gives us the chance to create an actual project plan that is achievable and attainable to go along with a potential charge if and when we get there. So, I think another thing about this process is people often say they wish the board was more transparent and disagreed in public more, and I think you all have gotten your share of that over the last month. But, I think to Mr. Spain's point, we all come here from different things, and we are all representing different and very real parts of this community. As concerned as I am and have been about how this has gone to this point, there are many other people who have reached out to me who, frankly, people I wouldn't have even expected to reach out because they share my concerns and they felt heard by having someone who had a different opinion from someone else on the board. And I think it is okay sometimes for us to not all be in exactly the same space. And I think, it's possible that some of this experience has helped us get a little more comfortable with public disagreement. I'm not saying everything has to look like this, but there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of differences amongst where we come from and where we stand. And that's okay because it doesn't mean any of us don't share the same values, but reasonable people can disagree on things even if they are directionally in the same place. And so we put a lot into this, and we're going to keep working, and we're going to keep moving things forward. I think it's helpful to have a timeline, but this is the compromise that I think we've been able to reach, at least as of this point.
Thank you, Ms. Coffey. Any other lights? Ms. Cunningham.
I would also emphasize the incredible amount of hours and collaboration that have gone into this, and wasn't my preference to do it over Thanksgiving, I will not lie, but I'm glad that we were able to land in the end where we did. I think this is a good start, and it feels like the right balance of getting the information together, beginning to, and giving more space for the community to mull on it a bit, and then coming back in the summer to either go fast or go, at speed, depending on how circumstances allow. For me, the historic analysis that is identified here is really important because I think we all see history from different lenses, and each different time and where we're standing and where our lived experiences can inform how we interpret that history. Tiger Group did a great job of pulling some of that together and having someone outside of Arlington, frankly, kind of come in with a fresh eye and share what they see in the data and the history, I think will be really helpful for all of us, and also help us lay the groundwork to begin what is probably the most important part of this, of educating and engaging our community. We heard some examples today about, we have a government that works pretty well, so when it's working pretty well, you don't spend a lot of time on it necessarily. But we, in our most recent survey for ranked choice voting, we asked if people knew who won the election for county board, and in a gubernatorial year, it was just over 50%, like 51%, that knew who won and had already voted. So we just, and that's true nationwide. Democracy kind of relies on having an educated population and having folks show up. And I think we're seeing nationally, locally, statewide, like how important that is. But I think that really emphasizes for me how much more work we have to do to broaden this room, to bring everyone here, and then to truly listen to one another. That's the hard part, because we all come with really strong views that are informed by the data and the information we've taken in, but there are a lot of different views. And so I hope we can use this process as one that is really, uniting us rather than dividing us. And I think it actually was the Black clergy's note that said, we should examine our past, assess our present, and use the process to strengthen trust, equity, accountability, and local decision-making. So if we get all that done, check, 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 we're doing great. But I will be on the watch in this process to make sure that we are meeting our targets of equitable engagement, that we slow down to do it better if we need to. If we're done, we declare done and move on, and that we bring as much of the community along with us so that even in the doing and the discussing, we are building a better community, a more connected community that understands and hears one another regularly. I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. Vice Chair DeFranti.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts. If I go on too much, give me grace, please. First, I want to particularly thank Ms. Cunningham and Mr. Spain, who did the bulk of the work to start us moving together here. All of us contributed, but I really want to particularly thank the two of you who led us on this. You worked to find common ground, and I know both of you have deeply held views on this, and that work, as well as the initial instinct towards support and instinct towards be thorough and slower, are part of why I fully support the two of you as liaisons to the full board on this over the coming months. I probably will have opinions too, but the two of you definitely absolutely should be our liaisons. Second, I want to thank Ms. Coffey for asking a question that, much as I might have wanted to, I could not shake. I didn't sleep, both because we have a 12-week-old baby, but also because this question stuck with me. The facts have changed. As much as folks here say we can walk and chew gum and do many things, we're about to take up our budget, and we're going to do our CIP. And I just don't think the next 6 months is the right time to be doing this work. Much as the last 2 or 3 years we've said we would do this work, I just couldn't get there. And I didn't get to understanding that. I think a day or two before I realized that in clear relief, I had a conversation with Mr. Carantonis where it became clear in an instant that the time was not now. We should focus on our budget and CIP. In the immediate months, we got to focus on our most vulnerable, and the Trump administration presents an enormous challenge. I think the steps in this motion to start the work are good ones. I look forward to July. Once we have wrestled with the budget, the board will have more time. I'll be inclined to move forward on consideration of how we are governed via a charge and a commission. The question for me, being honest and transparent, is how will we do this work, not if we do this work. It could change. Goodness knows the last 6 months to a year have presented serious challenges, and I take it as a fair point that we face enormous budget challenges. But I should also be transparent that for me it's how and when, not if. To be clear about what this work is over the 3-year time period that we have been saying we'll do this work, it was, for me, it can be bigger, but it does start with the question of whether, and they track more or less Mr. Milliken's points, of whether a permanently elected chair would be beneficial, whether districts, or in my case, I currently should be transparent, we should not prejudge, but to say we have no opinions is not right either. A hybrid system is of interest to me. And then other issues, expanding the size of the board is a byproduct. We should follow through on those, but we should also fully partner with our schools. That's a 100% fair point. And we should consider the timing of elections, the barriers to running for office. I believe we can do so starting in July and the months and year that follow. Third, I want to address the question, what is the problem this work is trying to solve? 2 short, simple answers for which I will provide examples. The balance between the board and the staff is not right. One example that it leads us to be less responsive than I think we should, particularly on issues of equity. It's not just 100 years ago, it's 1987 when we first had our first African American. So folks have member of the county board. We've had 2 Latino members. 42% of our community is of color. 62% are renters. We are not close to reflective of our community. The limits of identity politics are evident all of the time, and the dangers of populism are also apparent. But we have to work for possibilities. So one example, Carlin Springs South. It's a nerdy, wonky example, but for years we said we have to do the master transportation plan before. And if you have 3 votes, I fully agree, well, unless it's a policy that is ephemeral, usually you can get a change. But sometimes it takes 4, to be honest. And that's not my jam. Another example is the Serrano. I worked a ton on that, but it was too slow for us to respond to that. I believe if we had a hybrid system with someone who represented the residents in the Serrano, that our responsiveness would have been faster. I don't share the view that Ms. Meyer suggested at this point, that individual wards is the way to go. But Ms. Tenay, I'm going to take your point. I shouldn't prejudge the outcome. I just think that we should be honest about where we are, at least at this particular moment. I could go into more detail, I won't. I will also say about the phrase, what is the problem we are trying to solve? It is a reasonable question, and one that I think is driven by a pernicious polemic. That's what a friend said to me today. What does that mean? We should strive to offer nuance and not see our form of government as wholly good or wholly bad. Instead, I believe it is a public trust that we can reasonably strive to improve. I believe that's the spirit of the best parts of the Arlington Way. We have a very good government, and we could do better. That's realistic, but it also strives for hope and possibility that I think we have to have in how we're governed in addition. That's a fair reading, even of I also believe that the fair reading of the question raised, what is the problem we are trying to solve, will lead us to conclude that policy based on concerns about problems and hope is worthwhile. I want to be clear about my motivation. I'm not one who believes that balance is better, per se. In fact, I ran for this office precisely because I don't think that just a glib reading of bipartisanship is enough, particularly in this moment where this president owns the Republican Party. I just don't think I'm interested in progressive priorities, and that's why I'm interested in this. Housing, climate, hunger, inclusive economic growth, and funding our schools so that all kids can learn, not just those from well-to-do families. This is a note on process. Respectfully, this is a conversation, not a final policy. It will take at least 2 years if there is, and probably more because we have to change the law in Richmond and we have to go through this process. This is not a done deal in my view. And so some of the concerns regarding process are fair in the last month, but I also would say we're taking a turn towards being constructive. I think it's reasonable to go through the commission process. The Affordable Housing Master Plan and the Housing Commission, I was lucky enough to be appointed to, and I'm forever grateful. But I would also say that it's not a precondition for me. Our commissions are not as diverse as our community. And so if our commissions say no, that doesn't, for me, say per se we shouldn't go forward. I think the letter from 50 of commissioners is important and absolutely reasonable to delay. The history of the past 90 years and beyond make a working group a charge that is worthwhile at the appropriate time. All of the edits to the November draft are worthwhile. I will own at least partial responsibility for the charge not incorporating feedback. I apologize to you, Ms. Coffey, and to you, Ms. Cunningham, for not incorporating edits, even if we were a day or two before. I own some responsibility for that. We can disagree amicably, but it's important, I think, that we are constructive, and I fell short there. That said, I think this motion and the interim steps we passed today are worth taking and taking further consideration in July. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Chair DeFerranti. That was thorough.
Sorry.
Oh, you don't have to be sorry for that. It contributed to a conversation that we will be having in more details and in the coming time, in the coming weeks and months. Something that I personally welcome a lot is that we are now in a place where we, not only those who run for office will be asked that, so us, being out in the community, visiting places, visiting small businesses, visiting stakeholders in the community will be asking. And people will ask, okay, so what's in for me? What should I expect? Why should I care about this? What will change in my life? And this is a really difficult question to answer. Because the conditions of life today, first of all, we have already a federal government that does, that reforms the government every day, if you have noticed, and that impacts people a lot. It has really, really strong consequences. And I can tell you one thing, out on the street, when I go to the people who are affected by the Columbia Pike, the small business were affected by the Columbia Pike works over months, etc. The first thing that they want is stability in a government that they can count on, that delivers. Local governance is interestingly different than other types of representation in the General Assembly or in Congress. For example, here in Arlington, 25% of the population lives on 75% of the land, but 75% of the population lives on 25% of the land. For congressional representation purposes or for General Assembly representation purposes, these are, okay, you can slice them into districts. These are voters that can be represented in different ways or different layers of equity and level of representations. But here down in the local level, the 25% of the population that lives on 75% of the land also is on 75% of the streets and 75% of the sewers and 75% of the... So there are material reasons why the ideas of representation that we may have in Congress or in the General Assembly don't translate one-to-one in how we do local government here. And I'm Greek enough to know that things like transactional politics, things like corruption, things like, you just need to look across the river with a lot of districts and everything you want. And they did something, by the way, yesterday. They approved ranked choice voting to remedy that, as we did. You see, in my district, quote unquote, I have 70% of the recipients of housing grants. And in Mr. DeFerranti's district is, hardly 5, maybe 3. So I really need my government to serve these people, to take care of them. So I will need to convince, and I'm not so sure that I will always have a partner and a strong progressive that Mr. DeFerranti in this seat. In a seat where 72% of voters are whiter, not 40 or 60%, 72% are whiter, older, and way more wealthy than in my district. These are the fundamental, we are dealing with the inheritance of a century or more of inequities that are material here. They are not just structural, abstract, or removed from everyday life. They are here and we need to respond today. When we think about the school board, it's because we really care that this 27% of students that come from lower income households, from vulnerable households, have an amazingly established way to a better and brighter future. We have a mission here in local government, a community mission, by the way, because every year that each one of us has to run for office, we'll hear in detail about every single aspect of this. Every year. It's not going to be, the push of 3 or 4 or 5 in a staggered term where, you can organize and get the money, etc. So there are a lot of questions to ask here and a lot of thoughts to exchange. And think about modern governance is actually a healthy exercise. I really welcome that. Now, what this proposal, the motion of Mr. Spain and Ms. Cunningham, is bringing tonight to us is three essential things. It's doing our homework. So first of all, let's look at the history. Let's go back, look exactly what happened. As an immigrant, I'm extremely interested in Virginia history and specifically Arlington history. I cannot overstate how juicy the topic is, how many amazing details refer to today again, how not so innovative we are. Because almost everything that we are talking about today, somebody else before us was talking about that like 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. And they discussed that very seriously. Actually, back then, equity was actually fought on the streets. These were the 70s, right? So I am really interested that a credentialed academic institution help us find out the details and help us also give us something to really divulge. If you want, I have something that I learned a lot from historyfortomorrow.org. You can see the kind of work I'm referring to and actually tailored on Arlington and Alexandria specifically. The second thing, on our homework list, legal clarity about where we are, where we could be, where others are, where we could be, and have a very clear understanding of the options that are on the table instead of talking about what we would like and what, how we can tweak this legislation or the other legislation. What is today, what should happen, and how and what are the options that we have so that we know that for good. And the third one, and I think this is extremely important, we do periodically, Mr. Manager, thank you for organizing that every time, a very thorough resident satisfaction survey. And I think that not only because we are discussing what we are discussing tonight, but especially because we went through the pandemic and through the Trump administration, the seismic change here, it's extremely important to ask residents. For the very first time in Arlington, we have serious unemployment. We have very serious, skyrocketing need for social services. I mean, $20 million for housing grants. The eviction prevention money is through the roof. What Ms. Coffey and Mr. DeFerranti were saying, it's not only a product of, our revenues are flattering or, the vacancy rate in commercial real estate is, sputtering. We are maybe in a down circle. No. These are really, really fundamental changes. A third of Arlingtonians needs almost permanent support from a welfare equivalent social safety net. We are not designed for that yet, as much as I would like to. And therefore, when things really go, things can go really up, and 3,000, 4,000 people needs daily food support, we have to think, where do we find these resources? And something? In local government, until now, these resources come mostly from the taxpayer. And imagine in a place where some of the taxpayers say, oh, I'm sorry, we have also our own problems and we cannot be so generous this time. I'm sorry, we have to organize it in a different way. We are a different community in Virginia because, yes, we organized in a different way. We are a more cohesive, solidary community. We really care for each other, what I said yesterday, which is for me the last sentence of the Declaration of Independence. A very American attitude is, we are in this all together with all the differences and the baggage of discrimination and racism, but even that we have to resolve together. So for me, the economic question, which is the most fundamental differential between those who have and those who have not, is a question that I cannot shake off and divorce from this process. Therefore, this homework is extremely important to me, and this is why I'm supporting that. So, and with that, I close, and I will give back the microphone to Mr. Spain.
Yeah, we've already had the motion, and we're waiting on votes, but I just wanted some conclusion here. I just want to be very succinct and clear in articulating some of the concerns we've heard, and definitely take a moment to be pointed. Because when you lack clarity in how you converse, things end up being misrepresented and so forth. So we've had some core demands from the county, from the community. And, when we talk about community engagement, a lot of folks want that to come first. And this is what we've heard from the number of letters that have come in. So what you see on the screen and what we've talked about, this is what we're doing, right? How are we responding to that action? So we're going to have some direct outreach to our advisory boards and our commissions. The research partner that we get is going to evaluate some of our community feedback that we've received to date and in the future. And then they're going to recommend some future engagement methods and questions. Now, this in itself does not create an advisory panel just yet, but it does instead assess the next steps after engagement. Some folks will argue and say, well, you're just kicking the can down the road. This is a very thoughtful and methodical way to move forward. So as we also think about core community concerns that have come up, people want to say clearly define the problems, right? So we're going to put out, you heard the chair, many folks talk about our community satisfaction survey, which is going to provide us some data, and that's going to go into, public trust, satisfaction, engagement. And then we're going to review that as a board on how we proceed. And then also the research partner, we've heard a lot about racial and historical origins, and that some of the letters that have come in, people said, hey, you need to acknowledge and examine the discriminatory practices that have been going on. So what are we going to do, right? Our research partner, to be determined, we're going to do historical background, nonpartisan way, which is going to explicitly lay out and analyze some of our history. We talked about that. And to our attorney, you've heard that recently. When we think about representation power, we've heard about study, at large, study district models, study board size, study RCV, study election timing, manager authority, right? We've already talked earlier about speaking with having our attorney here look at that. I am also going to say, go no further than what's happened recently and look at Virginia Beach, right? And some of the things that have gone down there in the 10-1 decision that they made. And we also heard about involving key institutions early, right? So we talked about consulting with the county, the school board, the electoral board, advisory board. So what are we going to do? The county board is going to formally engage with the school board, right, as a key partner and the electoral board. We've heard about providing adequate staffing and resources, right? So what are we doing? County manager. How you doing, Mr. County Manager? We're going to ask them to direct and identify sufficient resources to complete all the actions. We're going to ask the clerk to identify the funding and procurement for our research partner by March 15th. So we're not just kicking this can down the road, and figure out external research capacity to build a plan. And lastly here, when we think about maintaining credibility and independence, look, this is why we want nonpartisan actors with this. You can read accounts of history, you can hear perspectives of people that have been here a long time. Many would argue that some of those conversations may be somewhat biased. So we really need to bring in a very neutral party, and there are several organizations and academia and institutions that can help us get there. And lastly, avoid delay and ensure accountability. This is what we're doing. We're going to come back, right, in July to a full report, and you have Board Member Cunningham and myself who are going to be responsible for some level of oversight. But I'm very supportive of this, because what it has shown is that, I talked about this a year or so ago. We have to learn how to compromise. and I think our vice chair talked about this, and what I've learned in the past week or so, over the month, we've really knuckled down. I didn't get everything I wanted. That's okay. But we found ways to find a common thread in each of these areas for us to move out on behalf of the community and the folks that we serve. So this right here, my friends, this plan, what we're putting forward, bottom line up front, it's all about trust. It's about listening before deciding. It's about learning before acting and making sure that any future governance conversation reflects Arlington as it is today, not just how it was structured nearly a century ago. So I'm looking forward to moving forward and doing this work despite everything in front of us. And thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues. This is our last meeting of the year.
Thank you, Mr. Spain, for the extensive post-processing of the comments. I see more lights. Ms. Coffey.
Swear to God, 2 sentences, and it's not something anyone else has ever said, but I think the other thing that occurs to me as we sit here, as we've had conversations about towing and code enforcement and everything else under the sun, I just want to really commit that looking at this in the future and continuing to do this work does not absolve us of the work of being better today and committing ourselves to being the best version of this form of government that we can be. And that is really important to me, that, you know, we don't blame all our problems on the form of government, because there is a performance element, and we need to make sure that with the critical things coming down the pike, we are committed to doing the best work we possibly can for the community in the system we have today.
Thank you, Ms. Coffey. So, without objection or more comments, I will call the most important vote of the night on the motion of Mr. Spain, seconded by Board Member Cunningham. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? I don't hear anything. With that, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. Okay, so before I ask Mr. Kushner the second most important question of the night, this is our last meeting. This is a moment to thank everybody here on this dais first, profusely, for your work on behalf of all Arlingtonians. This includes the support and collaboration that you gave to me and the office of the chair of this board. And needless to say, that nothing, absolutely nothing, would be possible without the tireless work of our county board office staff, led by County Board Clerk Mason Kushner. Thank you, Mr. Kushner. I also want to extend our gratitude and appreciation to the extraordinary corps of public servants, in the most literal meaning of the word, to all county staff, led by Mr. Schwartz, our county manager. And with the same sentiments, I salute all of you, the members of our community who engaged with us this year. And with all your help, Arlington is closing a year in which we really stood our ground. We protected our immigrant neighbors. We stood up for our federal employees. We leaned in to support those who needed us the most. We invested in affordable housing. We planned very well for our future. And we strengthened our resilience as a community based on values of justice and prosperity for all. So no matter how challenging 2025 may have been, we are looking forward to a bright and exciting 2026. So the second most important question tonight is, Mr. Kushner, is there anything else coming before the board tonight?
None tonight.
And without objection, we are adjourned in this room, 6 p.m., Monday, June, did I say June? January 5th for our organizational meeting. Thank you very, very much. Happy holidays.